Spencer came to the church and was just so excited, bringing wonderful. He's such a gifted baker and cook, and he creates these beautiful programs. And with our spiritual flower, the sunflower, which is the flower of the spiritualist churches, and it's just so amazing how he can find so many pictures. He comes with many gifts to share with us, and was recently voted in our president, and to help us to get on track. Spencer grew up on the Bishop Paiute Indian Reservation in Bishop, California. He's an enrolled member of the Bishop Paiute tribe. Paiute tribe. And a registered Native American Indian by the state of California. The Paiute tribe's Hollywood claim to fame is that it is the tribe that attacks the Cartwrights in the TV show Bonanza.
Go Paiutes.
Come on, I had a crush on Little Joe. So Spencer grew up experiencing Native American culture, attending powwow, cry dances, and other cultural events. His cousin used to lead a sweat lodge ceremony, which has the same summoning of spirit, like a spiritualist church would do in a circle. Spencer fell in love with the healing power that is available through participation in spiritualism. He believes in sharing God's healing gifts with everyone and in the creation of a community of like-minded people. He has been in the spiritualist community for at least 25 years, but he feels like the best is yet to come. Let's welcome warmly, please. Spencer Weisenberg. Thank you.
All right, so I made it to the podium without falling, so we're off to a good start on the speech. My talk today is called God is Calling, and it doesn't look like what you would expect. So in my early 20s, my best friend said to me, "You should go to church with my mom." And of course, I snapped back, "You should go to church with my mom." And at first I wasn't sure whether it was insulting me or what was happening, but Adam's mom was a very nice lady, so eventually I went. At my first visit to a spiritualist church, I was sitting in the audience waiting for the service to start. I was anxious, and suddenly I felt someone holding their finger underneath my nose. It was weird because I was feeling something that I couldn't see. And so I started to look around. Try holding your finger right here under your nose without touching. Do you see how you can feel your finger even though you're not touching? I think it has to do a little bit with the breath. So that's what was happening to me. I could feel, I knew it was an index finger, and somebody was holding their finger right under my nose. From there, it got stranger. I began to smell a recognizable scent. It smelled like my family. My brother has a very strong pheromone, and I'm not saying he stinks, although he kind of does. He just has a very recognizable odor. And if you were to walk into my brother's room, you would recognize his smell. So anyway, there I was, feeling somebody holding their finger under my nose, and it smelled like my brother's scent. I was a little freaked out, and I was looking around from side to side, and I asked Elaine, "Do you smell anything?" So then I was a little nervous and confused. The service started, which was filled with love, and I calmed down. After the lecture, there was message bearing, and this was the very first time in a church that I was told, "You are a wonderful, loving soul." Usually in church I was told that I was a sinner and that I felt short of the glory of God. Barbara, who was giving the message, told me that my grandfather was with her. And he had passed away way before I was born, so I had never met him. But he knew me. And sitting in that pew, I knew that spiritualism was real because I was getting evidence right there on the spot. I was recognizing my family smell, and I felt the finger, and do you know what I mean? I was like, wow, this is real. The angel kingdom was working very hard that day to give me the truth. Now, God works in mysterious ways, and another thing that happened to me before I was fully converted into being a spiritualist was years ago I was driving north on the I-15, getting on at Adams Avenue, and the intersection where I-8 meets the 15 is a very busy intersection. I actually still get very nervous at that intersection today. Anyway, I was driving way over in the far right lane next to merging traffic, and this Corvette came racing up to me from behind, and I'm watching this guy in my mirror, and it was clear he wasn't paying attention. He was going to drive right into the back of me. And so I panicked, and I tried to swerve out of his way, and I jerked the wheel to the left. This is where you need your seatbelt. I told her she's going to need a seatbelt. I was overcorrecting, and my truck actually went up on two wheels. So I'm on the freeway on two wheels sideways going down the 15. Like a stunt driver, only a no stunt driver. I could feel my truck beginning to tip, like it's going more, and I'm looking out the window, and the the cement's coming right up at me. My life flashed before me. I was moments away maybe from a life-ending crash. All of a sudden, this voice cried out in my head. I could hear it like someone was sitting right next to me in the cab of my truck. But it was just me. Later, I found out that it was again my grandfather coming to my aid. The voice shouted to me, "Take your hand off the wheel, let go of the gas." So here I am, sideways, looking down the road's right there, and somebody goes, "Let go of the wheel. Take your foot off the gas." And so I'm balancing on the freeway, flying down the road at 60 miles an hour. Thank God I was smart enough to listen to the voice in my head. I took my hands off the wheel and my feet off the brakes and the gas. The Corvette sped up and went around me, was like balancing down the road on two tires. And my grandfather must have been a good driver in life, because I could feel the truck wiggle around like he was balancing the wheels, trying to get the truck back on four wheels. It straightened up, came back into balance, and then it plopped back on four wheels, and I just drove off safely. And later my pastor was the one that told me it was my grandfather helping in spirit. Now, as I'm sharing these stories of my life, I want you to think about your life and the subtle, unusual ways where God has called you into service. Because it happens all the time, and we brush it off like there's something supernatural that happens, like a door closes or window opens or something strange happens. We go, that didn't happen. And it is God calling you. So on my path to becoming a spiritualist, I read this book that absolutely changed my mind. And it wasn't a very heavy read at all. In fact, it's quite a fun little book. The book is called Embraced by the Light by Betty Eady. I had just gotten off work at 4 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. It was kind of a warm summer day, so I was taking off my tie as I walked in the door. I strolled past the TV, slapped it on, and walked into the bedroom to put on some comfy home clothes. The Oprah Winfrey Show was on, and the guest was Betty Eady. I could hear, what's that? Oh, that's what he said something. Maybe it's Betty. I could hear her speaking as I was changing my clothes. She was saying that she never felt like she quite fit in because she was a half-breed. She grew up on a reservation like me. She felt conflict from being half native and half white. So did I. as I watched thinking, wow, that sounds like me, I was getting sucked into the story. In high school, while trying to fit in, I would hang out with the jocks, and as the Indian walks by, you could hear them say, like, those dang Indians. And then everybody would look at me because everybody knew I lived on the reservation. When you're in a small town that's cowboy and Indian, everybody knows who you are, even if you look as white as I do. So everybody would look at me. So then I would get uncomfortable and hang out with the Indian kids. And the Indian kid would say those dang white people, and then everybody would look at me. Right? So I was getting hooked watching Betty because of her story. I could totally relate to it, of not feeling fully accepted. But then it got really good. Betty had a near-death experience where she remembers going to heaven and getting a tour of heaven by St. Peter. When she came back, she remembered her visit, which, you know, they're supposed to close the veil and you're not supposed to remember that. She remembers everything. It's a great book. If you guys go to a used bookstore, grab it. It's really fun. So the story that changed my life and let me see the world in a whole different light was there was a spirit who wanted to come to earth to learn his earthly lessons. And he wanted to experience the power of being a lawyer. But he told his best friend that he was afraid to be in a powerful position because he would worry that he would forget to be kind. His friend in spirit said, "Don't worry, I'll go with you. And I'll go with you to earth to remind you to be kind." And this is the good part of the story. And it turned into a life-changing moment for me. So Peter's up there with Betty, showing this agreement between two friends. And it looked way different than you would expect. Peter rolled back the clouds to show a drunken man on the steps in the doorway of the lawyer's office. The lawyer had to step over the drunk every day to get into his office. Peter asked Betty what she thought about the man laying drunk. Betty exclaimed, "He's wasting his time. There's so much to do." Peter then revealed the soul of the drunk. He was one of the most respected souls in heaven, one of the hardest working guys. He was helping the friend remember to be kind. And as the lawyer had to step over the drunk every day to get into his office, he recognized something in his spirit. Even though he couldn't remember the man on earth, something connected his spirit and reminded him to be kind. And the guy was able to be a very successful lawyer and then go work charities and donate and help people along the way. So that's how he remembered to be kind. His friend came with him. I read this book before I worked for San Diego Municipal Court. I dealt with prostitutes and drug dealers all day. Coming out of court, I had to help them fill out their paperwork, go get signed up for the marshal, do this, pay your fine. And this story from Betty's book kept me out of judgment for people. Because you would right away want to go, "You're a prostitute, get out of here." Right, wouldn't you? If we're being real, it totally changed my view. I knew that God worked in mysterious ways, and I really didn't know what God's plan was or how it was even being played out. I believe that we come from spirit and that we will return to spirit. That God created this cycle to help us learn to get closer to having His knowledge. Think about if you were God, you'd be lonely if you didn't have a friend that was an equal. But if you could send everybody down to learn things yourself, eventually people could be equal. Think of it as a game where you already know some of these things, but as you were sent for your lesson on earth, you're masked by a veil. This veil serves to help you deeply learn your soul's truth. And when your mom tells you not to do something, but you try anyway, and find out later that she was correct the whole time, that's when you learn the lesson, is when you do it yourself. And that's what we're doing. We're down here doing our lessons. He's masking our knowledge so we can learn it deep within our soul. Now, having limits on the earth plane, like we're watching the war in Ukraine, which is horrible, or famine, or any of that stuff, having limits is where we really learn our lessons the best. Some lessons need to be taught the hard way, like starvation or the love of the loss of your loved one. The hardest lessons are the ones that we learn deeply. I mean, that's the ones that stick with us and add to our knowing. Now, I share these stories of my life to help you when something strange or supernatural happens to you. You know, like my truck on 2 wheels flying down the freeway is a miracle. It's a miracle I didn't die, right? That's what miracles look like. They're not always about Jesus ripping apart bread and cutting up a fish and feeding thousands of people. Sometimes they're about saving us where we are. All right, so when those supernatural things happen to you, look around. It may be God calling you into service. God works in very mysterious ways and will do anything to help us grow. There are times when God has called you into serving. Can you think of them? When we finish, there's a bunch of food. We've got mac and beef. There's apple cobbler, salad, bread. Let's all bring our stories out and tell everybody. Think about how God has snuck in and quietly tried to change you. So we're going to meet for coffee and snacks in a few moments. We are also about to offer spiritual development classes through Project Angel on our Tuesday nights. Please see if you can clear your schedule. The classes are so fun. There's people that are sitting in here that have been in class with me before. If you can find your way to do that, blessings will be dropped down on you. It'll be life-changing event.
Are you instructing?
I actually am going to have 2 people start out, which Jody and Jay Lori, and they're wonderful people. You would love them. Love them, love them. So come with an open heart and your willingness to help classmates, and God will bless you beyond your wildest dreams. Thank you for your time.